Hello, Flynn's family. Welcome to this new episode. Here we are with one of our favorite people in the world because he's part of the family. You are part of the community.
Kinda, yeah, at this
Yeah.
point, which is good.
Well, here with us today is Jakejames Lugo. How can I explain everything you have done? Because seriously, I have been doing some research and it's incredible how many articles you have been doing through all this time.
That's over now at this point, over 15 years worth of work that's involved with gaming, entertainment, pop culture, a whole bunch of stuff, movies, TV. Again, I try to tell people sometimes I do a lot without trying to sound arrogant, but it is a lot and is a lot of fun things that I enjoy doing. And again, it's hard to put into words just how much. It's ridiculous.
No, let's be honest about this. For example, I come from the advertising world, and I have gone through many different categories like banks, like labs, medicine, whatever you can imagine. But whenever I ever try before to enter to the comic world or the gaming world, is actually a lot of information. It's a lot to process, and this thing comes, and now with technology, it's even harder because it comes faster and faster every time.
Yeah.
So how you organize to for your information to keep it up?
Well, I just get involved with a lot of different things. And I just, again, a lot of the stuff that I like talking about, that I love writing about, that I love making content about, it's stuff that I'm into. So it's almost second nature to me that even though there's a lot of stuff that one could get overwhelmed with it, I'm already immersed in this stuff already. So it doesn't really bother me as much. Just, again, there's so many things happening every single day, every single week, especially in games, let alone entertainment, because of movies and TV there and comics, all that stuff is under the same umbrella. But again, a lot of this stuff, gaming specifically, is my bread and butter, and that just is something I've just loved for years.
So I guess everything started when you were a little kid and you like video games.
Well, yeah, I've been gaming for my entire life for the most part. I was, and I tell everybody this, and it sounds cliche, so bear with me. It sounds very cliche. I was born the year that the Mega Drive / Sega Genesis was made, and it came here to the States a year later as the Sega Genesis, but I was born in '88 like that. And my first game was Sonic the Hedgehog years later when I was conscious enough to play video games. So about 92, 93, I want to say, whenever Sonic first came out, my brother and my family, my older brother, he had the original pack-in, the bundle of the Sega Genesis that year when it came to the States in '89, which was with Altered Beast as the big wolf on it. But that was, again, Genesis and Sega has been tied to me my entire life, which is tied to gaming my entire life. And from that point onward, I've just been playing games. I've been talking about them for, again, so many years. And professionally, it wasn't until much later, now at this point, 15 plus years ago, where I started doing this quote unquote professionally, where I was putting myself on camera, where I was talking on YouTube, where I was writing, when I was actually talking to people over social media about games. And games and entertainment kind of coincided together like that, because some people say they're into games, but they're not into movies and TV. Me, I've had to be into everything. I had to be a jack of all trades with this stuff. And again, it just flew from there, and I've been doing it ever since.
What was the most challenging part? How did you say, okay, this is not something I just want to do as a hobby, I actually want to be a professional about it?
It came from a couple different things, and I want to say that it was a little bit of arrogance in the way where it's like I saw a lot of people on YouTube when YouTube was really starting to get its grounding in with, gaming content creators and people that were putting themselves on camera talking about or playing stuff for their audiences. I saw and watched a lot of people, and I said to myself, like, I could do better than this. I could talk about this better, that I care about games more than they do, or that I actually care about talking about this type of stuff a little bit more than they do. And that's not to put anybody down at the time, because there was a lot. Like, I was watching, obviously, Markiplier. I was watching Phil DeFranco talking about his stuff, which is not so much games, but it's like other stuff there. Obviously, PewDiePie, a lot of people watch. I watched DSP. I watched all types of people. Tobuscus, I got to meet Tobuscus years later after watching him. And there was a lot of different things where I saw all this content, and I said to myself, I know games. I could talk about games more. I have an opinion about this, and I wanted to put it out there. And I just kind of, it was like make like Nike and just do it. I just put myself on the bicycle and started trying to ride it. And it was just went from there.
And also something I always feel about your articles, and you said it also in your profiles, is that it's a lot of honesty information that
Yeah.
you don't, well, in Latin America we will say you don't marry to anybody. It's just that you really try the product, you make your reviews, and it's a lot of really tasty information. But at the same time, I feel that honesty is what makes you like from, because also you have your own style. So it's difficult to find your own style without making it so complex, because this world you can't be like pepita de oro. You can be
Yeah.
a gold piece for everybody.
You can't be inauthentic, and that's the thing. A lot of this job, a lot of with media, journalism, being a media personality, and content creation, especially YouTubers and streamers will understand this. Everybody could see an authenticity from a mile away. They can understand. They know what's real. Real recognizes real is what the phrase goes. And a lot of this stuff, when you're giving your opinions out there, when you're trying to give people information, you're trying to give perspective and give a lens to people, honesty and authenticity is a huge part of that, because once you lose that with the audience, you lose it forever, or at least it's very hard to get back, because there are many different people, especially over years, that they've done one thing or expressed themselves a certain way, end up coming out as either frauds or dishonest or lying to their audience, and that really damages them and their ability to make this into a career. With journalism, one of the pillars of that is being straight up with your audience, because a lot of time you're dealing with facts. Even though you're being subjective with your opinions about stuff, you have to earn that right with the audience, not so much with your bosses and the outlets that you're with, because I've, at least at this point, have the experience of being both someone that's written for outlets, especially larger outlets, but also being out there on my own as a content creator, and I've had the best of both worlds with it. And one thing that they have in common is that element of honesty where it's earned. It's not given to people, because you can't just put your camera on yourself and just be like this, and that, and everybody's going to agree with you or take it to heart. You have to be like consistent with not only the way that you present yourself, the consistency with the content, show how much you actually care about what you're saying, whether they agree or disagree with you. And the biggest thing with it, at least for me over the years, is that people, when they listen to me talk about stuff, entertainment, games, Star Wars, pop culture, if you disagree with what I have to say, at least you walk away with something with it. You don't have to necessarily be on the same page as me as far as agreeing with me, but you at least know I'm coming at it from a perspective that at least you gain something out of it.
And also it's about respect, as we were talking before.
Yeah, you got to earn that respect. You got to
Yeah.
earn that respect. That's, again, same thing as authenticity. That's a sign of respect from the audience when they come to you, when they want your opinion, when they want to listen to you, when you have something to say, or when you have something to provide to the audience. That it's journalism and media and content creation is coming from a place of service to the audience. You're not necessarily doing it just because you love it and just because you have to make money or whatever else. You're coming at a place of service to the audience that cares about the stuff you're engaging with.
So through the years, as you said, for example, I'm a lover of the PlayStation 1, and so far it hasn't come something in this world that makes me change my mind.
Yeah, PlayStation's great.
Through the years, which is your favorite, or which ones have been your favorite?
Oh.
If we talk about consoles.
Like favorite consoles or
Yes.
favorite specific consoles. I mean, I'll give you a top three. I mean, I love the Sega Genesis because that's where it started for me. And that's a 16-bit nostalgia thing for me. No ranking order, just kind of like whatever. I love the PlayStation 2. PlayStation 2, I think, is a phenomenal console, probably one of the greatest consoles of all time because of what happened when it was released in that time frame. People who got a gaming system that was also a DVD player. That was a big deal. And that's the early 2000s. So for me, that's a nostalgic time because I was just getting into high school, but also you had a lot of big things happening in pop culture. The Star Wars prequels were coming to an end, and there's a lot of big, phenomenal, iconic games that were coming out for that console. And then another one for me, surprisingly enough, for some people might not expect it, would also be the 360. Even though I love consoles like the GameCube, which is a whole other conversation. I love the Nintendo 64, a whole other conversation. No lack for Nintendo, I should say. But the 360 was another one of those turning points for me as a gamer and as someone that cares about this stuff, because I was always originally Sega Genesis, then I got into the N64, then I got into the PlayStation. Xbox was the last brand of consoles and of ecosystems of games that I really got into, because I didn't own an original Xbox. I had friends that owned an Xbox where I got to play Halo. I got to go play all the iconic Xbox games at the time. That used to be a thing back in the day in the 90s, where if we were kids, we didn't have a lot of money, we would have one console that our parents would get us, but then you had friends that have other consoles. And that's how you kind of mingled and you interact and you got exposed to different things. Xbox 360 was the first console I really bought with my own money after working so hard. And at that time, we had games like Gears of War. We had games like Halo 3, Dead or Alive 4, and many other games like that. But I was exposed to that ecosystem on my own terms back then. So it was those different eras and points in my life with gaming that really kind of mixed things up for me. So those are my top three consoles that I could think of. But that's always a changing thing. Like in my top three, top five are always like, ask me one day, it's one thing. Ask me another, it's another.
So, well, nowadays with technology, everything moves faster. So you think it's a good thing that they take their time, for example, between one PlayStation and the other, or maybe just do it like the iPhone that you release once a year?
No, you don't want that. You don't want that. I mean, mobile tech and other types of tech are one thing. Game tech is a little bit different, where this is obviously big investments. It's the same thing a little bit with computers, where you buy a desktop PC one year, it might be outdated, quote unquote, in like a year or two. That's how the Mac and Apple type of approach of things are, and that's really a brand thing. For me, usually I'm so used to the whole 10-year console cycle, or at least 5 to 7 year console cycle, which is like you have that number of years where you have those games that you're getting the most out of that console and that technology, what not only game developers can make and utilize with that tech, but also the type of experiences you can engage with. So PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 had a number of years, and that had to do with the success of that console, but also the types of games that were just consistently being made for it. People loved developing for the PlayStation 2 because they knew that there were PlayStation 2s in households. And the same thing you could say about other consoles at the time, but like PlayStation 2 was one of the biggest selling consoles of all time. And you could think of any type of game, and they have a game on there in that library. So when the PlayStation 3 came out, it was a little bit different. It was actually a little bit harder to develop for that because, again, you had the cell processor. You had a lot of things with that specific console that was pushing the envelope with technology, but it was so different from the norm of the times that I think that when you have those gaps in years between consoles, it's good because you get different experiences, you get different types of games that develop, you get that time that developers have to really get the most out of those consoles to give the types of games that people envision in their head at the start, but become a realization at the end of it.
Let's talk about also budgets, because, for example, I remember the first time I had to buy, well, with half of my money, because it actually was my dad's money, a PlayStation 4 for my brother.
Yeah.
I went to New York by myself, and of course my objective was to enjoy New York, but then suddenly it was like,
Big Apple.
PlayStation 4 is there. So my brother was like, please, please help me buy my PlayStation. And I remember I finally found it. I went to a store, and even the guy said, no, you can't leave the store with a PlayStation 4 bag. You have to take a taxi from here. And oh my God, it was the only time
because people are wild.
it was the only time I actually
They were jumping
paid
people
for a
consoles.
taxi in New York.
Yeah, and it's not cheap. Those
It's-
taxis,
yeah.
those are not cheap. Not in like the Manhattan. Heck no.
So when I came back to Peru, I was telling my brother, please really save this with your life. As
Yeah,
I
I almost
did
got
with
robbed out here for you. Like, there were people. You gotta understand, like that happened with the 360 era. That happened with PlayStation 5. Happened with the Series X. It happens all the time, and it's gonna happen again with the Switch 2. Because the problem is,
Don't die, don't die.
it's like, yeah, right. See, it's crazy. But anyway, the problem is though is that when new tech comes out, sometimes it's not always available to everybody out there, and unfortunately, some people get cute and they try to, they try to get a bunch of consoles. They try to sell at higher prices. The flippers on eBay. That's a whole other thing. It was like that back in the day, especially when consoles were, again, they're still a luxury now, but they were still even more luxury back then because they're pretty expensive, especially with the types of experiences and the types of things that you have to pay for on top of what you get for the console. Because you're not just paying for a console,
Yeah.
paying for games, paying for accessories. It adds up real quick.
So how can you create a smart budget for those who are following us, who really like this, and maybe they say someday, hey, I want to become a pro, but for everything you need budget, especially in this country.
Of course, yeah. Well, here's the thing. You got to come to the understanding that you don't need to play everything. People get too caught up on the idea of that FOMO.
Or the trendy.
Or the trending stuff, but really it's FOMO, the feeling of missing out, because if you're not doing one thing, you're missing out on that. You're doing another thing, you're missing out on something else. And a lot of people, especially in media, that want to become journalists, they think they got to play everything. And there's an element of that is somewhat true in some cases, and especially with bigger releases. But you don't necessarily need to play everything right then and there at release, but you also don't need to play everything, period. Like the games that you like, play the games that you love, talk about the games that you love talking about and stuff. You don't necessarily have to be well versed in every single thing. It's not a mandatory thing, even though it helps, which is very important to understand. And a lot of content creators get caught up on that. A lot of starting out people in journalism get caught up on that. And it's one of those things where, for me over the years, I've struggled with that because there's so many games, there's so many things, there's so many people that have different experiences that you want to connect with and network with and stuff. That could get overwhelming in different ways.
I understand that part because, again, I'm trying to be aware about the game and stuff, but, also my passion is fashion, and it's difficult to be on trend.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. I know some people in fashion, and that's a whole other...
No,
can't even imagine.
And I think at the end of the day, people will respect more your style because that's the most genuine thing you can do. And it's the same here. Once you get your own style of how to write, and what things you really like, and which things you are not, you don't want to participate, people also is going to respect that for who you are. You can't like absolutely everything. That's a real fact.
Well, again, you're not always going to like everything, but the ability to talk about something, whether you like or dislike, or something that you don't know or whatnot, that's always an invaluable skill to talk with people. But again, when it comes to games, when it comes to entertainment, you don't have to be into everything. You don't have to kind of go out of your way to actually expose yourself to playing every single thing, because again, it adds up. When you don't have access, especially when you're starting out, you're not going to be getting free game codes from companies and stuff. And again, feeling like you need to go buy every single brand new game that comes out every month, like $60, $70, $80 per game.
You will lose 2 kidneys in 1 year.
Unless you got 2 or 3 jobs, like that's not the best way to go about it. You know, I've had it times where I've been fortunate enough, you know, over the years that I've gone this where certain companies will give me codes for games, or I'll apply to certain places to get for free review codes. The last big game that I got that was like a game provided to me was Indiana Jones. It came out at the end of last year. And that was because, like, again, I've done other Bethesda games that I've covered at various websites and stuff. That comes with time. And a lot of people, they want to get that stuff instantaneously, and it's not always like that.
There is something also very important. How, this world nowadays with all the social media and stuff, people think that everything have to come in an instant.
Yeah.
For example, let's say entertainment. If you see a movie that nowadays everybody's into reboots, but you haven't seen the movie before, or how the creation of the company was made, or the vision they had during the first and the second movie, you actually can have a real opinion based on the new reboots. That's what's going on also nowadays with the
I think that's a little bit over, like, hyperbole in a sense,
Yes.
because I think that comes from a very purist or almost like an obnoxious mindset from some people, because look, when it comes to media, when it comes to movies, because I've had, again, besides games, I've had the experience of being able to talk about, review, and be critical of movies and TV. And I think that it's good to do that, because sometimes the best way to get like really good at one of your like disciplines, or at least one of the fields that you're in, is sometimes to expose yourself to other things. Like when I learned how to write, you know, or when I wanted to write about games, I had to learn about how to write in other ways. Just learning how to write before I could really write what I want to talk about or what I want to write about specifically. And with movies and stuff like that, especially now with reboots and a lot of things kind of like making a resurgence from like pop culture, the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, I think there's this obnoxious things like if you weren't there for it, then you can't have an opinion about it. And that's not true. So when a movie comes out, you know, and it's in theaters, you go see the movie, you could have an opinion about it. I think that sometimes way too many people get caught up on this like need to kind of like, you know, almost like peacock in a way. It's like, look, I was there, I know about this stuff, I'm like legit, or I'm real with stuff. It's like real recognizes real when you actually see how they actually deliver things, when you know how to talk about stuff. Like two of my biggest inspirations that helped me with being critical about movies, TV, and even about games, Siskel and Ebert. Was it Gene Siskel or Roger Ebert? Those are the 2 greatest critics of all time. You wanna know why they were so good? It's not the fact that they were writing for like the Chicago Tribune or the New York Times or whatever else they were doing at the time. It was because that every single day for their show, they talked about film, and they loved film. It could be about something as crazy as like Citizen Kane, all the way down to Batman Mask of the Phantasm, or like Star Wars, or like, you know, any sort of like crazy like budget indie movie or whatever else. They cared about film, and they showed it in what they delivered like that, which allowed them over time to generate that respect and that credibility that they built.
Do you organize your time? For example, how many movies are you going to see every week, or how many hours are you going to dedicate to write an article, so you have time for everything?
Yeah, like, again, it really depends for each person. Like for me, I make the time to do that stuff, and usually it's because if I'm interested in something, or if I have like time that I just want to kind of waste a little bit, I'll watch something, or I'll play something, anything else like that. It's never really like I'm planning out months in advance of what I want to do. It's usually like, okay, what am I feeling at the moment? What am I thinking about, you know, for the next week or the next couple of days and such. And over time that builds up, and then you look back and you're like, oh my God, 700, 800 articles that I've written over like the past like 10, 15 years. You'll be like, okay, that's a lot. But, or even as much stuff as I've seen or I've played, because I've played more games than most people realize over time, some of which I've never written about, or I've done content about, or even talked about on like a TikTok video. And again, that really just comes from me caring about wanting to engage with this stuff. You can't get too caught up on like the, you know, the need to actually have so much stuff to show somebody. You just gotta, again, make like Nike and just do it.
What's the most challenging part of, at the end, when everything that you already set up, you say, okay, this can go, this can't go, I can't talk about this right now, this can wait. So what's the most challenging part of what to select for your content?
For my content, again, it's really tough because I've had the struggle of like making content that I was really passionate about, but nobody watched. And that's a big thing with a lot of content creators all the time. And you can't get around it. It's just sometimes things happen and it's not your fault. Like you gotta just kind of just brush it off and keep it moving. There have been times where I've wanted to talk about stuff where I know people won't watch, even though I'll put in hours editing a video. Like I've done videos on games that are like fantastically edited, script and everything, VO. I'm talking about the work. So you want to talk about a one-man production? freaking
Launch the
so
pump.
much, you know, and all of a sudden 10 people will view it. And it's like, come on. Like, there were times where I was getting games early. Like, I remember one specifically for Resident Evil 2 Remake that I had it at the same exact embargo time as IGN. I had it early before everybody else in the world. And hardly anybody watched it. Everybody watched IGN's thing, but hardly anybody watched mine. And it was like, I knew my content was just as good, if not better, than theirs. Not anything bad against them. But the point was is that my stuff was getting pushed out there. And then there's a million and one different reasons for stuff like that. But at times that could be very demoralizing. And when you know that's happening and you see it happening, you're experiencing it, you got to understand that this stuff gets better over time. It's just that who can outlast and who can endure the longest when it comes to this type of stuff.
Wow.
It's real. It's real talk.
Yeah, it's actually a lot of information to process. I can't believe that up to this point, well, through all this time, we were talking about also over 700 articles.
Yeah, and it's probably more because I was telling.
Probably more.
Because keep in mind that's probably stuff that you probably looked at, maybe Muck Rack and stuff you saw
Yes.
which were published. But like that's not counting how many videos I've done, how many TikTok posts and social media posts I've done, the events. So it's probably a lot more than that. As I might be a little embarrassed because it's like, yo, that's a lot, but it is a lot.
It happens. Seriously, it happens. My husband still doesn't believe me that I actually wrote a book about hotels in English and Spanish, of luxury hotels about Peru, and it's somewhere out. I don't even have that book. It was for an editorial company. They paid me.
Hey,
I'm on the credits, but I think it might be
You
on
got it.
Amazon. Yeah.
so that's what works.
It's somewhere around the world. But it happens. For you, what was the most well, for example, you know, we are both Latins or half Latin roots.
I'm by the way, I'm probably one of the few Hispanics or Latinos in the games industry that does stuff like this, because there's others that are out there, but I'm one of the ones that's the most conservative with it, but also the most like vocal. Like, I mean, we could talk about that stuff because that's a whole other conversation, being Latino in the games industry. But like, I'm very
Actually, that was my next question.
Okay,
How
well,
is about
we
being
can get into
Latino?
now. I'm very humble with it, because for anybody that doesn't know, and I don't talk about it often, even though I'm not ashamed of it or anything. I'm Puerto Rican. I'm Boricua. You know, from New York is where I was born. But my family is also from the islands, and they're real pure blood Boricua and Puerto Rican. One of the quirks I have is that I don't really talk Spanish, as you know.
When we met, I told him, and he said, I'm Puerto Rican. He actually pronounced the R. I was like, wow, you're the first Puerto Rican I hear that his R's are strong.
But I don't really talk Spanish like that, and it's really because of where I was raised, and like, again, I don't talk Spanish a lot with other people because I was mostly talking English. But I still have that heritage to me. What really gets tough as a Hispanic in the games industry and in entertainment and in media in general, sometimes one of the things that gets under my skin and on my nerves is that when they try to challenge your heritage because you don't speak the language like that. And for me, I'm as Hispanic or Latino as anybody else like that, and I talk the way that I do. But I just don't happen to talk Spanish like that. Like, you don't see me on a lot of Spanish media. Like, there's one person that hit me up, like, talking in Spanish one time randomly on social media. I was like, hey, listen, I talk in English, but, like, hey, I'm more than happy to hear you out and stuff. But there's always those things where they just almost, like, challenge your credibility and challenge your heritage and your ancestry with it. And it's like, that shouldn't be a thing, but it constantly comes up every once in a while. But I'm proud being Hispanic in the games industry. It's something that I've talked about in various different instances. I actually did a thing with the University of Texas where I talked about where it was part of the Latinx Creative Consortium that they call themselves. And we talked about everything involving being a minority in the games industry, minority in entertainment, talking about like the opportunities that we've been afforded over time and such, as well as also when I went to Make Games Miami and Miami-Dade College, I got to speak about stuff like that. But I was speaking as a media person to a lot of indie game developers or students that were trying to be indie game developers. So it's been around with me. I just don't flaunt it. I don't put it in everybody's face, but it's one of those things just like, yeah, that's what I am.
And I think that part is important because that makes you unique. That makes you also have a vision of what other cultures could imagine about a certain game or a certain console, because everything is different markets. So you also sometimes make research on what other markets think, or you just do everything for United States?
Mostly for the United States. I mean, you have to have an understanding that games are a global thing, and different markets and different audiences think and see things a little bit differently. So the way we see things here in the United States and North America might be different, obviously, in Canada, might be different in Mexico and Latin America, might be different in Japan, might be different in Europe, because, again, there's a whole bunch of countries there. The French audience might be different than the German audience, than the UK audience, than the Russian audience, and the Middle East. It gets crazy like that. But you got to come at it with the sense, it's like, look, this is what I'm provided. This is how I see games, and you do with it what you will. You don't want to be inauthentic in the way where you try to cater your content to a specific audience in order to look good. I think that a lot of content creators, sometimes media people as well, get too caught up on that they want to be liked. They don't want to be authentic. They don't want to be real. They don't want to just be themselves and actually let the audience decide what they feel.
And also depends a lot of the content. Like, for example, people maybe here don't know that, for example, The Simpsons is a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
But Argentinians are seriously in love with The Simpsons. I live in Argentina and I love Argentina, but they seriously crazy about The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Dragon Ball.
God, Mexico, Latin America, they are
Peru.
big.
We are the 5th big audience in the whole world about Dragon Ball.
Big, and then the dubs, Dragon Ball in Spanish. That's a huge thing. Like they care about that.
Yeah. So there is a lot of things that are involved in the industry that also make other markets maybe more important, sometimes more than others in certain ways, but always the focus is United States. And why you think this industry is so important in general, not just because of the numbers or of course the competition.
Well, I think that's part of it. I think the United States with games and entertainment in general, because that's one of our biggest exports here in the United States is entertainment. We're just that big of a market. I know you could say China is another one because obviously with movies a little bit more so. For games, that you could also throw in South Korea. There's a lot of like esports and live, gaming there, and a whole bunch of other stuff that's also big. Same thing in Japan. There's a lot of big things. I think that sometimes where a lot of conversations is kind of like tied into the whole Latino and minorities and games thing is that sometimes people try to cater towards certain audiences, again, to make themselves look good. One thing I never wanted to do was to use my heritage and use my Latino background as a crutch. Because I'm proud of it. It's part of me like that. But then you have some people out there that just get on they get caught up on a high horse where they like I'm this, so you have to support this, or I'm this and you have to like me, or I'm this and I should get pushed to the front of the line. It's like that's like big no-no for me, because not only do I think it's insulting to our people, which is a big thing, and I say our people understanding that Latinos and Hispanics were a cavalcade of like tapestry of stuff.
Over 20 different countries.
Which again gets to a whole other conversation, but it's a tapestry of things. But for me, I never wanted to be like a Latino content creator or a Latino journalist or Latino media person, and that represents everything that I am. I'm a content creator, I'm a media person, I'm a journalist that just happens to be Latino, and I happen to be able to talk about these types of things and be part of these conversations without it being like an excuse, which I feel like the moment that you start doing things and make that type of stuff as an excuse, you're doing a disservice not just to the same group, race of people that you're a part of, but to your audience in general. I see that way too often. That's a big problem sometimes on social media when there's a lot of conversations going on and stuff. And I think that it's a mess when you look at it and you try to engage with it or you try to avoid it, because too many people are focusing on way too many other things rather than the actual heart of the issue.
How do you deal right nowadays after all these years with the people who may be like against your opinion or who are in favor of your opinion or who is like, I don't know, sometimes just a little cuckoo?
Yeah, there's those weird people that are out there. The thing is, I take a lot of example from other media people in other places. I look at a lot of sports media. So like I look at ESPN, I look at a lot of other like Fox Sports and all these things. And you can look at personalities like Stephen A. Smith, most opinionated guy in sports. A lot of people don't like him because of his opinions, but they respect it because he has opinion. He's earned that. He's in the business like over 30 some years like that. And when he comes at stuff, he has an opinion, you might not like it, but it's coming from a place of genuine, love for this type of stuff and actual care for it. And for me, I've had a lot of opinions that people disagree with. Like, obviously, about Dark Souls, about Elden Ring, the whole Soulsborne genre and stuff. I have a really negative opinion on it because I've had experience with it. I helped write the guide on IGN for Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. I had to do the wiki guide for it, and I hated it. It was freaking frightening. It was a nightmare, okay? And on top of that, I've had to play other games in that genre that were also a nightmare to deal with. But the point is, I have that exposure, I have that background as far as looking at this stuff, but I also have a legit, credible opinion to take my stance that I do. Some people don't like it because they don't want to hear anything else. They want to hear what agrees with them, and they want people to validate their opinions. My job as a media person, as a journalist, as an individual content creator that's in this space that wants to resonate with people and have a voice is not to validate the opinions of other people. It's to give people the information and give people thoughts and perspective and let them do what they want with it. I don't know if you're familiar with Star Trek's The Prime Directive.
wow, there are too many Star Treks.
Okay, so there's a specific thing in Star Trek and all Star Trek media called the Prime Directive, and what it has to do with is actually not interfering with the growth of civilizations and actually influencing them to be a certain way. That's one of the core tenets of Starfleet. The Prime Directive for a lot of us in journalism and in media, and especially as a game journalist, is to not dictate what the audience feels and to kind of give them their opinions, is to give them the info and give them perspective and give them the lens and present to them stuff and let them decide on things themselves. That's what everybody should do, and sometimes people lose their way with it.
Exactly. I feel like after all this, and again, when you enter to the media and you are in this big Shark Tank, because I will call it that way, it's a Shark Tank.
Yeah.
To make your own path is not easy.
Not at all.
Not
Very
easy.
difficult. Some people don't make it. There's a lot of people that do different things. Like you get a lot of Patreons out there, a lot of people that go on their own. They make big channels. They got millions of subs and stuff and doing different things. And some people don't. They sometimes either try to work with certain outlets and they just don't make it, or they leave the industry. I've seen plenty of people I've known over the years leave the industry because of that.
Do you feel ever that in that point that you said, maybe this is not for me and I just have to quit?
There's days over the years that I've had that, and everybody goes through it. If anybody tells you that they haven't, they're lying to you. Because as someone that has been with this now over 15 years, that has seen the good, the bad, and every facet of it, everybody is multifaceted in a lot of ways where there's different days that they have, and they go through all of it. Like there's some days that are great. When I went to my first E3, phenomenal time. That's when I knew I wanted to be really invested in all this stuff, where it paid off, where I was actually there with the people that I was watching on G4 back in the early 2000s, seeing them go to E3 or to Comic-Con. Now I'm their colleagues. I'm not an audience member anymore. I'm standing next to Jeff Keighley, who does the Game Awards. He's the host of it. I met Jeff Keighley. He was one of the first industry people that I met. That it was Jeff Keighley at my first, wasn't my first industry, well, not my first E3, it was my first industry show, which was PAX East. But like being able to say like, I watched you on TV. Now I'm with you in this. I'm in the trenches with you doing these things. I'm on the football fields with you on the team. Now I'm not just a fan. Like it's a big deal.
I was going to say something about that because I feel also when we come to the arcade and we have those freedom meets or we go to the events, that there is some people, and not just happen to me here, it happens also because I come from the industry of theater and some people who are actors and do movies also in my country, that I see the fans and I understand why they can't be professionals or they can't actually do this like you and I, because I feel that fear or that I'm not sure if we call it respect, but
anxiety.
Anxiety when they approach to somebody else like, oh, you got.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the difference in the mentality with it. Like everybody's gone through that. I've had it before. I've met celebs at places when I wasn't in the industry, like going to an event in a professional setting. Like I went to Comic-Con, my first San Diego Comic-Con, I met people and I was like that. Everybody goes through that, especially with celebrities.
Take me next San Diego Comic-Con.
Like San Diego Comic-Con, it was wild. But my point is that there are people that are fans that love this stuff as fans. Then there are people that love this stuff that's actually wanted to be a part of something and actually make a difference in it, or to make the things that we engage with. Like I've met people that started out as fans and went into game development to want to actually make video games. I originally wanted to make video games, and I quickly realized that is not my thing. It's very mathematical, it's very procedural and scientific in ways because of game programming and game science. That's not me. I love the conversation about games, which goes into what you could do in media and in journalism, where you're actually talking about it and having opinion and stance on stuff that you provide to people. That gets into something else. Some people don't want to do with that. They just want to have the casual conversation that they want to fan out about it. That's very different. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not going and making a career on stuff. And often you see a lot of people on YouTube or content creators that tend to mix up or forget about stuff like that, where we've had content creators that get access to things and you see them, they look like a fool. Like that's the easiest way you could put it, where they'll go to events and they're wilding out and they're fanboying, and they're probably there to do that because the PR wants them to do that. But then you look at it, it's like, like you're not a journalist. You're just someone that's a fan that just happens to be there. And there's nothing condescending about that when it's the truth. I've had times where I've lost access to people like that, and as annoying as that could get, you have to put it in its proper place, where some people that have a million or so followers, it's just a numbers thing where they get access or they're able to do things. And even though I'm a legit journalist of many years, I might not get it, but it has nothing to do with me personally. It just has to do with the business.
Yeah, and that it ever happened to you that you actually, when you started, of course, because, this is also about practice. The more you do it, you get better. That you met somebody special and actually you were in that fan position where actually you get a little nervous or...
I don't know about nervous, but I've had bad interactions with some people in the industry. Like, I'll tell you a story and I'll take out the names. I've met people that worked for a certain website, larger website that I've always idolized or I looked up to. And this was after I was in the industry for years. They tried to tell me that despite my experience and the stuff, even with my name out there, that I didn't have enough experience to go work with them like that. And I took that to heart because, and I took offense to it because it's like, you know, I've been here for a long time and I've had this where it's like I've proven myself and continue to prove myself, which you constantly have to do as you go deeper into this stuff. But there's an arrogance to it that I'm not a fan of that some people have when they get into this. And it's not that they have the skills to do it. They get lucky enough to be in a position that they're in. And you have to be very humble with this. And some people are not. And I've met even content creators, YouTubers that are like that have been very rude, that have been nasty, that I'm fans of their work. But when you meet them in person, it's not really the same thing. You have to be the bigger person, the bigger adult, and the bigger professional to put that in its proper place, because sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes just some people are just the way they are, and they, you know, they prove you wrong thinking that they're one way, but they disappoint you in another. That's happened to me many times, especially with some that you would not even believe that, oh, again, 15 years, you get to see some stuff.
Yeah,
you get to
of course.
come across some stuff. But it really comes down to making sure that you have your stuff straight, you have yourself humble, you have the perspective and the lens to see things for what they are, not what you want them to be, not what you wish them to be. And unfortunately, sometimes it's not like that for some people. And some people don't have that same mentality, and sometimes people don't have the courtesy towards others. But you have to just, you know...
Respect and education, for me, those are the bases.
Yeah, you would think. A lot of people sometimes don't have courtesy or respect on certain places, even at events. Like, there are stories I could tell you from E3 that are wild, that I can't say on camera, but they are wild with some of the most craziest, ridiculous things from people you would not expect that are just, I thought were cool, and ended up being so cool. And it's like, you know, it is what it is.
But for me, that's something very important, because I feel that people sometimes, again, they think that others are like superiors or they're gods because
They have this
they are just
obnoxious
the fans.
attitude that's just like really condescending.
And you just have to realize what you see on camera is not always what you're going to see on real people.
Yeah.
Because generally, especially with actors or, you know, they are making a character. So the character is not the real thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Especially with celebs and actors that get big like that. Now, on the flip side of that, to be fair, I've met some people that are real and are better than how they are actually portrayed. That I've seen like legit people that are nice, that are cordial, that are chill, or they're not as big as you know you believe them to be, and you see them, they're just really nice people in general like that, or just very, very like mellow more than anything else.
Now you make me think, because I always want to do villains. I love villains.
Yeah, you can also imagine too. There's some people that play like iconic villains that are just nice people. They're just super chill.
I want to be an iconic or a pair of iconic villains at least once in
Just
my life.
mean, bad.
Yes, exactly.
Like, you know, it's a perfect example to tie it to Star Wars. You know, Ian McDiarmid plays the Emperor. He's the most evil guy in the galaxy. Super nice, super chill dude. Super, very, very relaxed.
And especially now, after all this year, you will think, oh, he's a beautiful grandpa.
Yeah, right? Or here's a perfect example for gaming. I met Charles Martinet, who's the voice of Mario, but he does more than the voice of Mario. He does the voice of Wario and Waluigi and many other characters. They're like evil, like conniving, like sneaky guys. One of the nicest old men I've ever met. Super chill. He actually knows how to do Mario's voice and stuff, and some of the characters' voice, multiple languages. And
Oh
he did
my God.
one time. I went to an event. He did it in 4 different languages, and I was like, wow, that's some skill.
Yeah.
And
Of course.
that's all he plays, or all he played for a while, because I know he's like retired now. He's more of a Mario brand ambassador, but like he did that, and he was nice. That was one of my most pleasant experiences, meeting someone that's related to games and like stuff that I do. That's like super chill.
How do you prepare your agenda to go to these events or to?
For let's say like I go to an E3 or PAX or Comic-Con or whatever else. Again, a lot of planning beforehand where I want to go. Sometimes I make appointments. With E3, I went to 6 E3s that I went right up to the point where it ended, because
Oh.
E3, if you didn't know, E3 is not around anymore, right? So prior to that, it'd be months of planning, you know, as far as like getting appointments, getting games I want to see that I know are going to be there. Or sometimes you're not told certain games that are going to be there that you're going to see until that week of or that day of. And that's happened to me many times. That happened to me one time. I went to Comic-Con and I was one of the first people, and I hardly talk about this, so this is cool. I get to tell you. I was one of the first people to play the Star Wars Battle Pod. I don't know if you know that arcade machine
Okay.
for Star Wars Battle Pod, the
Wow.
big thing like that. I was one of the first groups of people to play that in New York for New York Comic-Con. And it was with, I believe, Bandai Namco that I had the appointment. And I didn't know I was playing it until I was right there. And then every Star Wars fan knows those notes when they're, because you go to this presentation, there's things close off, and then all of a sudden you hear those notes, and then they lift up this curtain, and you hear the notes of Star Wars. It was like, oh my God. And then I realized what it was. I'm like, okay. Like, there are moments like that sometimes you can't plan for that end up being awesome. But there's a lot of planning going into some of these events and going to some of these games you're going to see. I've had it where I've had to plan to go to events where I actually get to go to a studio. Like, if you remember the game Destiny 2?
Yes.
Okay. I was one of the first groups of people to go play Destiny 2 as part of what's called the review cycle. So before the game comes out, I went to Bungie's offices and I got to go play Destiny 2 with Bungie. And I got to go see all the Halo stuff that they have on display there. But we got to go play the game there. It was a month or two of planning where they flew me out there, actually, and they put me up in a hotel for a couple days doing nothing but playing Destiny 2 for my reviews and my coverage and everything else. But all that has planning beforehand. Same thing with events. Like when I went to E3 or to Comic-Con in New York, I would know there's certain games that are going to be there. They'll tell me certain stuff. They'll be like, okay, you're going to meet at this time. You're not even going to be on site. You'll be off location at a random hotel. Like, you know, you used to do that a lot? Activision. If you remember Activision, before they got bought out by Microsoft, they used to do that with Call of Duty, where they have a whole separate hotel suite devoted to Call of Duty. There was one time that I did it where I got, if you remember the game Sekiro that came out. Okay, the guy who created Dark Souls, his name is Miyazaki. He was doing a thing with Sekiro. He had a private presentation of that game in a hotel room, in a suite, where we actually got to see that game. But it was planned out, and they wouldn't tell us what it was until it was right there that day. But there'd be things like that you gotta, plan out for, and that's all that stuff is figured out beforehand, leading up to those surprises when it happens.
When happened the first opportunity you had for a sneak peek review?
Oh man, for a review for a game.
Yeah, like that.
There's two different things, because there's a sneak peek, like the preview, and then there's a review. So the first.
No, sorry, for the preview.
For the preview, okay. So for a preview of a game that I've gone at an event like that, probably be my first time going to PAX East. That was my first industry event that I got to do, because that wasn't my first review stuff. That was like years prior. That was like early in my career where you get to do that. But my first preview of, I believe, was of Saints Row at the time. One of the Saints Row's games. I don't know if it was Saints Row 3 or it was Saints Row 2, something like that. But it was years ago that I did. And I got to talk to not only the PR, but also some of the devs that were there. It was just like you go in there, you check out the game, you get to talk with them and stuff. Very, very procedural like that. It wasn't, again, you try to be on your P's and Q's and you try to be up and up when it's your first few times doing an industry event stuff. But then when you go to more events, it's a little bit more laid back, it's more casual. Sometimes you see the same PR people that you've been talking to over email, and at multiple events, you get to meet them in person. It's much more nicer. It makes everybody at ease when they see somebody that they know. So when Bandai Namco used to be like that with me. Every time I go to an event, and I see all the Bandai Namco games, I would see the same PR people, the representatives there, and they'd be like, oh, hey, JJ, like, what's going on? And, we get to see their games. It'd be very nice. Everybody be very chill. It's not like they go into what's called PR mode where everything needs to be answered a specific way because this is going on record and all this stuff. It's a little bit more lax like that.
For me, seeing all this career, it's seriously, first of all, not just entertaining to see. It's more like, wow, there is a lot of work.
This gets deep, yeah.
Yeah. So while, also through the years, for example, videos became more important to show to their people.
YouTube, and stuff. Yeah.
What do you think are going to be the next step in your career?
Well, obviously, I want to be hired up by a legit outlet. I want to be able to work for full-time for a larger outlet, a larger place where I could put my work on a grander stage, as well as also being a personality in person on camera talking about this stuff, which is what I do normally as is with my own TikTok and my own YouTube. But I want a larger company to recognize that, a larger place to recognize that. So whether it's an IGN, a GameSpot, an Entertainment Tonight, or a Dateline, or whatever, Access Hollywood or something like that, where I put myself where people could look at that and be like, okay, this guy's got not only legit opinions and legit perspective, but he's got the backlog and the portfolio of work and the history of being able to talk about this stuff and care about this stuff, where I could actually listen to him and feel like I'm not having my time wasted. I want my voice to resonate amongst people, especially with games. Since I talk a lot about games, I care about games. I want people to listen to that, even if I might not have 1 million subscribers. When they listen to me, they know that they're getting real, actual, credible lenses and perspective from it.
And can I ask something very, well, I will say personal?
Sure. Open book here.
No, it's just that, well, sometimes, I know you're a big fan of Star Wars, but which ones are your favorite topics? Star Wars, Mario?
Star Wars, games, I would say movies in general, like that. I mean, I say Star Wars and movies are like separate things because it's two different types of conversations you could have about it. But I love all this stuff. Like, pop culture is really the umbrella that encompasses all of that, and entertainment media is really what everything is under like that. So it all is part of the same family.
You sure?
Yeah. Pretty much. Like, that's the way, when you look at it, again, there's so many conversations you could have about all those different things, about types of movies, about types of things related to Star Wars, about games, about comics and all this stuff. But again, it's all under pop culture because all this stuff is entertainment. This is all the media that we engage with. It doesn't matter what type it is. It's still same type, part of the same like branch of stuff that we all talk about.
And through the years, what do you think that have a better legacy? Like, for example, nowadays we see that Disney is going down.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd be like Disney's going down. I don't know about all that, but I think what's weird that's changed over time is that people have gotten more blunt with their opinions and have sought out blunt, like, not belligerent or volatile opinions, but people where they feel like they're being real, but it's really a lot of the time it's people just vying for attention. I think that's like a huge problem with a lot of stuff because they mistake notoriety or fleeting popularity with actual credibility. And that's something that I've taken to heart over the last couple of years because just because someone has a couple 100,000 subscribers or 1 million subscribers or whatever else where they feel like they have an audience that pays attention to them doesn't necessarily mean what they're saying is legit or real, because I've disagreed with a lot of content creators out there that have said variety of opinions, like even with Disney and Star Wars. Like, I have my criticisms. Don't get me wrong. I got my criticisms of Star Wars, and I'm very vocal. I actually print my stuff, my opinions about Star Wars. The thing is that they talk about stuff and I cover it. So I have to be able to have the perspective and the lens of be able to see the entire landscape and to see things in their totality as opposed to what my emotions are in the moment. Just because I don't like The Acolyte doesn't mean to me that Star Wars is dying, because there are many different things. You know, we had Star Wars The Acolyte, which I thought was a terrible show. I wrote reviews about every episode. Eddie will tell you, like, I was there at the premiere for this thing. But at the same time, while that might be bad, we also still got great Star Wars games that have been coming out. We're getting more very soon. We got Star Wars Celebration coming up next month at the time we're recording this in April. We're going to be able to see more newer stuff and movies down the line. The point is that something like that should never be caught too much on the hyperbole. It should be seen exactly for what they are.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I'm still fan of Disney.
I love Disney. I love the parks. Like, when I went to the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge for the first time, that was wild.
my personal opinion about Disney is they really need to change their marketing strategy more than whatever they are doing with the movies.
I think they need better PR. I think
Yes.
Lucasfilm specifically needs better PR, because I think that you can't be trying to sell a film or sell a project or a movie or whatever else and have your actors or the people behind it arguing and beefing with your audience.
Yes.
I've noticed with Disney specifically, it's been like that. Now, other studios have smartened up and they haven't been doing that as much, if not at all. But I've noticed, like, look now, Snow White recently, you could tell Rachel Zegler really changed up her tune not that long ago. The point is like, you can't be doing that when you're trying to sell a movie, because at the end of the day, it's a business. At the end of the day, it's a project where you need that audience on all sides of whatever affiliation or whatever stance that they take. You need them to come see your films. That's your ultimate goal, like that. And then me as a critic, you know, at the same time, us in the media, we can't judge pieces of media through that lens. Like, for example, obviously there's a big political thing with a lot of stuff, and I don't like talking politics as much because I think it's very divisive, and I think that people go way too far with it. But
Very passionate.
very passionate. Passionate is an interesting word. Let me put it that way. But for me, I can't review a movie or review a TV show or review a game through a political lens, because I feel one way about something and the developers or the people that make this stuff feel another way about it. That's not fair. You know, that's what happened with Harry Potter, you know, with the Wizarding World, which is a big deal over the last couple of years. That's what happened with Star Wars. That's what happened with Disney proper. That's what happens with many other things, pieces of media. It comes to a point where, you know, me as a media person, as a critic, has to be the adult and has to put check myself at the door and see things for exactly what they are. Because sometimes a lot of people are saying one thing about a project and it ends up not being that bad. It ends up not being what's been said about it.
I feel like what you said is totally true. Like, we have to be more responsible here about our content.
Yeah, responsibility. That was the word I was looking for. The people got to be more responsible, especially critics and media, with their opinions on what the type of stuff they put out there.
I hate to see all these websites that they take from 10 seconds or for 5 seconds, like an attitude, like an eye. Maybe it's not even the correct angle, and they just cut it and make a whole story.
Well, part of that is media. Part of that is, you know, the game of the business of media and stuff, which I get. And that could be very annoying. What I don't like, I think is probably a bigger issue, is, again, when you're getting people or getting freelancers or you're getting content creators or whoever else putting out content that's based solely on their specific feelings about something, again, without seeing things for what they actually are. So, for example, you remember when Hogwarts Legacy came out?
Oh yeah.
The game came out, the Harry Potter game. A lot of outlets, they reviewed it. There was a whole big discourse about it and stuff. There was one outlet in particular that did the worst review of that game, and the worst review I've ever seen printed, that I think they should have put a retraction. It was from Wired. They gave that game a 1 out of 10, which I, as someone that reviewed the game, I gave it, I believe, an 8 or a 9. Did not deserve that, because at that point, you're not reviewing the work. You're actually making an opinion piece and getting on a soapbox about what your feelings are, which was a whole other conversation. I don't think that it's irresponsible to do something like that, because the people that work on that game, the people that are developing that game, the people that are doing the marketing for that game, the fans, the audience that care about the opinions about that game, it's a disservice to them. If anything, it's journalistic malpractice, is what I said at the time. That was probably the worst instance of seeing something like that was so irresponsible. And it happens every once in a while with different projects. Hogwarts Legacy was one instance. Far Cry 5 was another instance. What is it? There's I'm trying to remember. Assassin's Creed Shadows coming out soon. That's one that's been percolating a lot about stuff. Dragon Age: The Veil Guard is another one. Mm-hmm. You know, people talking and making content based on their personal feelings rather than what the actual instance is.
That's a very interesting perspective, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
For you, this also how you feel your evolution to give an opinion through the years, because it's not the same when you are in your 20s and your 30s. Mm-hmm. Almost in your 40s.
Yeah, close. I'm still young.
We are still
gonna
young.
date me over here. Jeez, I'm not that old. Damn. But my opinions, my opinions have always been my opinions about stuff. There's been instances where some of it has changed, but I honestly have gone and I've made much more of an emphasis to take the step back and actually see things from a wider lens at times, rather than be so quick to judge things harshly. I think that's probably the biggest problem that I didn't say before. People are so quick to judge things very harshly. They want to criticize, they want to critique, and they want to break down stuff rather than actually take for what things are. You know, when I go into a movie, I'm not looking at it to have a problem with the movie. I'm looking at it, what is this movie going to give me? Okay, show me what you got. Like that. Show me what's there, and let me try to enjoy what you're presenting to me. However, some people don't always think like that. So over the years, now 15 years, you know, even after 6 or 7 years, I was kind of coming into my own like that and actually trying to think like, okay, you know, I have a responsibility to the audience and a responsibility to myself to see things from a better lens and to see things from a much more non-antagonistic view, but an actual critical view that actually gives things a chance, gives the benefit of doubt more than anything else.
And for you, which one has been your most satisfying experience in this industry in the last years?
In the last, over my entire career, I would say it was the first time I went to E3. The first time I went to E3 was when not only, because normal people in the years before, my first couple of E3s, you can't just buy a ticket to go to E3. Later on, people were able to buy what's called the gamer badge, which is like the casual person. It was a mess like that. But it used to be a very exclusive, very industry event. And for me, that was validation where it's like my opinion and my work actually mattered in a way where the industry is accepting me to go to this thing that a lot of people don't get to go to. That I felt that being around, again, the booths of E3, being able to go and see some of the games, go to my appointments, my first E3, being in the Nintendo booth, when Nintendo's a very stingy company. I love Nintendo. They're the best. La Mario. I know some people that work at Nintendo that have actually gone from PlayStation to Nintendo to work. But they are very stubborn, very annoying company sometimes when you're in the media, when you're trying to get an appointment with them. And they have to be like that because they're Nintendo. They've been around for almost 100 years, if not more, for a very long time. And there's a reason why they've been around that long. But being around their booth, when I got my first Nintendo appointment to go see games that they were making that year at E3 that they were showcasing, or being able to just be around Shigeru Miyamoto, the guy who created Mario. Like, I didn't get to talk with him, but homeboy's in the room, okay? Being around Reggie Fils-Aimé, when Reggie Fils-Aimé was the president of Nintendo, he was in the room. They called him the Reginator, the man. And seeing little things that like make me laugh. Like there's certain stories in E3 that will take up too much time. But like he used to have a group of bodyguards I used to call the Bowser Brigade, because like a bunch of dudes with Bowser pins, they're the security. It's like, it's funny. It's a whole other thing.
It's a whole other experience.
My point is though, is that being in that environment, being able to talk to these people, you know, meeting Hideo Kojima for the first time, the guy who created Metal Gear Solid, you know, that was validating for me. That was like, this is the type of stuff I want to be around. This is the type of stuff I enjoy. I love games to this point where I want more of this. And, you know, the people around me, my colleagues, the industry actually accepts me and looks at my stuff where it's like, we're accepting you to be here. that was very, very surreal for me. And it was unlike anything I described. And when I went to my first Comic-Con as media like that, it was very similar, but it wasn't nothing like that first E3 because I used to watch E3 coverage on G4 TV back in the day with X-Play, with Attack of the Show, with the screensavers. Like, that was a big deal to me growing up with that. And that was the point where I was like, wow, I'm starting to make it.
You know, I was offered to be once the host in the Comic Con of Peru.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but they really gave me a bad offer. I won't say why, but it was not a good ethical proposition. So I said no, and I said I want to keep doing this. I want to keep doing interviews, and I not for something.
I want to
bad
do more
happens.
stuff like that at events. Like I've been trying to encourage a lot of the events in Florida and South Florida to invite me as a guest to do stuff like that because not only am I very good at it, not to brag, but like also it's fun and it's validating because now I'm there for a purpose, not just there to kind of like, linger or meander or just to be there for like a brief time and see the con, but I'm actually there to do something. Like to me, that's fun.
We can do it. Next summer, we are offering our services.
Events like, yo, hit me up. That's the thing. I always have an open door policy. I always tell everybody, whether it's people I work with at outlets or it's events that are looking for people to do stuff or come cover events. I have an open door policy. Just say hi or hit me up on social media. And it's like, I'm here, I'm ready to do stuff. And I have the legit backing, the credibility and the portfolio work to show that I could do stuff like that.
Has ever happened to you that a fan or somebody approached to you and was like nervous to meet you?
No, not nervous to meet me. I met people that have recognized me and have been nice and friendly. I've met some bad peeps that have been rude and nasty to me because of stuff I've said or of like they've seen me in an event and just been. That happened to me one time recently. I believe it was either at Animate Miami or SuperCon, my last one that I went to. That some person was just real like crazy to me. But I've never met anybody that was nervous to meet me. I don't think I've gone to that point of like notoriety and popularity. But there are definitely people, especially down in this area, that have known that I've exist and done stuff because again part of my career was covering a lot of the South Florida conventions and I did it for years, and that's like everything from SuperCon to like MizuCon, ChibiPod when it was still around, ShadowCon, in Tampa. I haven't gone to like stuff like MegaCon yet, which I want to at some point, but I've done a lot like for over 5 years down here in South Florida that I've been able to do that. But eventually, maybe as my TikTok and YouTube channel hopefully grow, and obviously when I do stuff with other outlets, hopefully that gets to that point where people, I don't know if they need to be nervous to meet me because it's not like I'm going to do something to them, but like just to come say hi. I like that, being able to, know that people care about my work and actually care about the stuff and they enjoy it. That's always a great feeling.
What would you say to the kids and the people who wants to get involved into this business, like how they can start right now in this crazy world? Because I feel like also the way you started 15 years ago is not the same that you can start now.
There are very similar like characteristics to it though. I always tell people make like Nike and just do it. And just if you want to be on camera, if you want to talk about games, put yourself in front of your phone camera or whatever camera you got, start talking about games, put it on YouTube or go on TikTok or go on any social media, start talking about stuff. You only get better with this stuff the more that you do. It's like a muscle. When you work it, it starts to get stronger and stuff. It's always like that. Everybody in the industry will tell you that same thing, or at least some of the people that I know that are bigger, like that have been part of channels, that have had big Patreons. They all did the exact same thing. They just kept doing it and just somehow they got lucky, which is how it always is with some places. Obviously, there are other things that go with it, opportunities and, applying for jobs and other stuff, as a part of outlets and other things. But getting up and actually just doing it, and rather than just thinking about doing it, and rather than just fantasizing and being, down about it, stuff, it's not going to help. Just make like Nike and just do it. The more that you do it, the better.
I have a last question. How do you feel doing this podcast today?
It's fun. That I have fun talking with you and stuff. I mean, we talked about a lot. Hopefully y'all enjoy it. Should like and all that stuff. Comment down below if you enjoy it. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on.
Because we have met like what, a month ago, and we always talk.
Yeah, we always talk every time we see each other at events and stuff. So it's not that bad. It's like, oh my god, I'm in this podcast. Like, you know what I mean? Like, come on. No, but I think it's enjoyable for them because it's always fun, casual conversation or whatnot. So hopefully they enjoy it.
How do you feel in the Flynn's community over the years too?
Oh, coming to Flynn's? I've been coming here ever since they first opened.
Yeah.
I think I told you that, and I think Eddie's talked about it, where I've covered Flynn's all their anniversaries and stuff ever since they first opened. Because I met Eddie before he opened Flynn's. And then when I came that first night, I did a whole bunch of video stuff on it on my YouTube and such. And it was just, again, from there. And then on top of that, we talked eventually where I became Flynn's first sponsored content creator, which is, if you ever come to Flynn's, You actually see the videos on there. You'll see the picture of me on like the montage. I think you've seen it before, right?
Yes.
Like other people have mentioned that they've seen it before, but he shares sometimes my videos on there and things, which I always appreciate. I always thought that was very nice and it was a great gesture. But he loves my content and he enjoys it. And some of the other people that work here, Flynn's, enjoy it, which is very, very humbling to know that I'm doing something right.
It's just that, well, the way I see it every time you speak, just sound so serious. And for me, the word is passion. That like real about the things we're talking. That it makes me hear more. I want to listen.
It's intriguing. It's engaging.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you hear some people talking and they're boring, and there's like I don't want to be boring. I don't want to, and you don't want to brag. Because there's a very fine line between that. Like some people take it. When you talk about what you do or talk about what you've been involved with or what you've seen, they take it as like bragging, and you never want to be like that, especially when you're talking to an audience about stuff like this. But sometimes you just got to be real. Be like, yeah, I did all this stuff, but I enjoy being a part of it. That's why I've gotten to this point, which is always fun to me. The more fun it is, the better. If it's not fun, then people are going to see that immediately.
So please, for the audience, can you tell us all your social media channels?
Yeah, sure. So I am literally everywhere. Okay. At Jakejames Lugo. You can find me on Twitter or X, which I call it Twitter. So Twitter at Jakejames Lugo, Instagram at Jakejames Lugo, posting every day pretty much on those places. Threads and Blue Sky at Jakejames Lugo. You can find me on there, posting every single day. The big ones, youtube.com/at Jakejames Lugo and tiktok.com/at Jakejames Lugo, where I'm literally every single day on TikTok posting up new videos, literally posting up new videos every single day on YouTube about games, about movies, TV, pop culture, Star Wars, all the stuff that I care about and that you all care about all the time. So show some love. Go follow me on all those platforms. Leave comments, and just say what's up. I'm always open to talking with people all the time on my content, which is always fun.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for all the Flynn's family that are in the other side of the screen. Please don't forget to follow all the Flynn's Arcade, also in Twitch, in YouTube, in Instagram.
Instagram.
Instagram, yeah. Thank you so much. Have a great day.